has England left the EU?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes and no. The UK has left the EU in the same way that you've checked out of a hotel, settled your bill, right? After having shat in the room, told the hotel they're a piece of shit, right? Really fucked the place up, and then gone, I'm really sorry, but I've got nowhere else to go. Can I stay for another 11 months? And that's basically where Britain is now. Technically, the UK left the EU at the stroke of midnight on, I think it was January the 31st this year.
That's right.
Although as a bit of a fuck you, it wasn't midnight UK time, it was midnight Brussels time, which I thought was really funny. That was obviously Brussels just going, got ya, we're our rules now. And so right now we're in what's known as the transition period. And the point of this transition period was by January last year, or actually not January this year, by like even before then, right, we were supposed to have had a deal. And what that means is that Britain was supposed to have said, look, we're out of the club, but there are still many things we want to cooperate on. So let's come up with a new treaty to establish that kind of future relationship. And EU said, yes, we'll negotiate that in good faith. And then Britain didn't. And so basically what happened was the Britons just had to say, look, we're leaving because we kind of said that we have to. And like Boris Johnson would just get slaughtered if he didn't leave on paper. And so the reason why there's all this kind of panicking now is that kind of 11-month expires at the end of this year. And at the end of this year, we're faced with the prospect of what people in the press are calling no deal. And no deal basically means like we leave the EU and all of its institutions and all of the kind of economic ties, all of the kind of like citizens' rights, everything just stops and nothing replaces them, right? Like the UK would have like less formal legal ties with the EU than like Timbuktu, right? It's an absurd situation to be in. And so basically everything is about getting a deal. But the problem is Britain's made a lot of promises to its electorate about how good this deal is going to be. And the EU has said, we cannot give you a deal that's better than your existing membership. And Britain has said, why not? Yeah. The EU has explained that so many times, and every time we've gone, okay, well, if we just speak a bit louder, like maybe they don't understand us. And so that's kind of where we're at.
So they're like, the UK is like, we want nothing to do with you, EU, but we want more to do with you.
Man, to use that hotel analogy, we're literally saying we'd like an upgraded suite next time. like we're not happy with the size of the bathtub. Plus, also, we don't want any Romanians to ever come to our room. That's basically what we're trying to say.
Romanians. So can I ask you, why would the EU negotiate at all? Why wouldn't they say take it or leave it? You know, like a hard businessman move.
Well, I mean, that's a very American way of looking at things, I suppose, because we're dealing with diplomacy, not business, right? And remember, the reason that the EU was set up was to prevent war, basically, right? It started with like a coal community of basically countries going, well, we're fighting over natural resources. Why don't we standardize the price and stop fighting, right? And the EU has now become it's become a political institution, right? And the reason why the EU doesn't just want to tell Britain to fuck off is, firstly, the UK is still the EU's biggest trading partner, right, in terms of like goods and services that are exchanged. And so it is in the EU's interest to continue to trade with the UK. I mean, while it's easy to say, well, you could just strike up a trade deal with Japan or Australia, you forget those places are ages away. So it's like much harder to sell stuff there. And also, the Japanese don't want our cheese, right? So
English cheese.
Yeah, exactly. And so also there's kind of a duty to negotiate in good faith. And what that means is that like the EU can't just say, go fuck yourselves. Like the point is there's already been an agreement that they're going to unpick the ties in a nice way. The problem is Britain's just not used to being nice.
Yeah, you guys want to rule the world still in some way, right? Like,
well, do you know what? You say that, but I think regrettably that is a really strong part of the narrative. You know, that Britain used to have an empire. You know, we could do it before, we can do it again, and there are proposals saying, well, we can kind of kickstart the Commonwealth and come up with trade deals but it's like, what possible good does Myanmar have for our financial services over and above Frankfurt? It just makes no sense at all.
So here's the obvious question, okay? Why is a deal being negotiated now if the vote happened 4.5 years ago? Shouldn't a deal have been like, what were people voting on 4.5 years ago?
Yes,
if they
that's the
didn't know
problem.
what it was? Usually you negotiate a deal, and then when everyone can see the deal, you vote on that deal.
Good. So this is a very intelligent point, Turner, and this is what legal commentators in the UK have been saying kind of from day one, right? Like I follow some of like my old law tutors on Twitter who are like it's so surreal. They're like the people who like the Queen phones if she needs to know what the Constitution says, right? And they said that the single most ludicrous thing that the UK did was to structure the Brexit vote this way. And the reason it happened was David Cameron was struggling. David Cameron is the former British Prime Minister.
Yes.
I mean, maybe I should change the word former.
Big fan of the pod.
The disgraced British Prime Minister. He had a big problem that there was a growing far-right movement in the UK led by Nigel Farage. And so he had to basically solidify the right of his party to make sure that they didn't migrate to another right-wing party, right? Because the Tories, the Conservative Party, have stayed in power for now the last decade, basically because they've managed to not let the far right take any vote share, right?
So Cameron's, just to jump in quick, Cameron's on the right, but he's not the far right.
He's like a normal right.
Yeah.
But he had to appease the far right.
Yes.
So he gave them a referendum thinking he would lose, right? Is that the...
Go ahead.
So in my view, there was no question at all that Cameron thought that he would win the referendum because he had previous in this. Because remember, a couple of years before, Scotland had a referendum on whether they would leave the United Kingdom, right? And that lost, right? So Cameron, I think, miscalculated that Britain wouldn't be so stupid. The British people wouldn't be so stupid as to vote to leave. And I think the miscalculation was partly his own ability to like lead that campaign, like he just led it terribly. Secondly, the fact that there was clearly interference from Russia and other foreign money helping the Leave campaign. And thirdly, the fact that the framing of this issue was basically a question of hearts versus minds, right? The technical legal complexities of the UK's relationship with the EU are too big for any one person to fathom, right? Although I've said, right, like I literally studied this. I studied like intellectual property law through the perspective of the European Union. Even I couldn't begin to think about how do you untangle the two legal systems. They're so tightly intertwined. And so they were never going to win the argument on those grounds. They had to win the argument on something to do with the heart. And there's basically nothing you can say in favor of the EU because the narrative of the EU in the UK for the last 30 years has been anytime there's been a problem, it's the EU's fault. So, we've got problems with unemployment. That's because there's free movement of people. There are EU citizens that are coming to the UK and taking your job. The truth is they're probably not, but that's irrelevant, right? It's a matter of how people feel rather than the truth that's important in these things. And so the Leave campaign kind of captured words like sovereignty, which basically mean nothing, right? But it sounds good, doesn't it? Do you want some sovereignty? Yes, please. Right? Like no one's going to turn down sovereignty, are they? And so that's kind of how that campaign, just about got over the edge. And so the people who were in charge of the Leave campaign, the likes of Boris Johnson at the time, of course, wasn't a cabinet MP. He was just a kind of a regular minister. Sorry, not even no, he wasn't a minister. He was just a member of parliament. Michael Gove, etc. You watch the video of the results night. They are completely shocked. They have absolutely no idea what to do because their calculation was the Leave campaign would narrowly lose, then they would all of a sudden have a big base which they can galvanize for the next election. They miscalculated it. So all of the promises which that campaign made, which is we'll be leaving the EU, but we won't be leaving Europe. We're still going to have close economic ties. The EU are going to strike a trade deal that's of equivalent terms to what we currently have. All those promises were easy to make because they never thought they'd be executing on them. So what's happened now is basically all those lies have caught up with them. And it's very easy. It's very easy to win this argument in the abstract. But the moment you have to write it down in black and white, all of a sudden problems occur, such as the Northern Ireland problem, which I'm sure you've read about,
right.
Or such as whether the UK can stay in the customs union and also strike its own free trade deals, like they were claiming they could. And these are basically insurmountable problems, right? Like there's just no way of. It's like a suck and blow thing, right? There's no way of actually winning, and that was never a problem when all this was in the abstract.
So what? Yeah. Okay. Wow. So And ironically, now Boris is the prime minister, and he has to be the specific one dealing with all this, right?
Yes, because this was basically, I think Boris calculated his only chance to become PM. Like, he's wanted to become PM since he was a little boy.